Welcome back to Mystery Woman Knowledge, where sometimes our hyperfixations are the same thing. I'm Sam Beer, that's Tori Hirsch, and today is a good day. What are we talking about, Tori?
Today we're talking about mudlarking, and some of this is going to be redundant for you because I know that I've already talked about it a ton. But a mudlark is someone who scavenges the river mud for something of value. Mudlarks were people who did this along the River Thames at low tide. They were Londoners in the 18th and 17th or 19th centuries. They were usually children from ages 8 to 15. There were some like really energetic elderly people out there digging through the mud as well. And it was mostly boys. There were a few girls and women scattered throughout them. But if you went down to the river and you were a poor little child and you had no skills or abilities, this was a pretty decent way to earn a living. Because you were able to just go down, collect what you wanted. You could work on your own terms and your own hours. However, there were dangers associated with this because the river was disgusting. Um, they were constantly wading through sewage and corpses, or they could get cuts from broken glass or other injuries. So it was really dangerous. But in 1904, a person could still claim mudlark as an occupation, which I thought was interesting.
And what year?
1904, a person could still claim mudlark as their occupation.
As I guess not a side topic, but is
Yeah, sure.
mudlarking only for this river? Is it like not a thing you can be like, yo, this would it be?
So I
Taxes.
wasn't entirely sure. I think that wait, do you mean was it like is it
Like
does it only
across,
apply to
like, is it just like you live in London, you do the shit?
okay.
Or is it
I
like,
think
I
I
live
think
in
so.
Wales, can I be a mudlark?
Yeah, I don't think that it applied to I think that it was like a cultural thing and that just Londoners were doing
Uh,
that. I'm sure that other people in other parts of the world were doing the same thing because
hmm,
mudlarking itself is a broad term, but usually like 90% of the time it's applied to people who do it in London.
interesting.
Yeah, I thought so.
Okay,
Um
that
by
was my question.
19 Thank you. By 1936, it was something that kind of just kids did on their summers off. Like nobody claimed it as an occupation anymore. It was just like people who wanted to run down to the river could do it.
Me and the boys are gonna go mudlarking.
That was it. That was kids would come home from school and
Saturdays are
put
for the
on their little
boys.
swimsuits. Yeah. Saturdays are for the boys and mudlarking only.
That's it.
um, but I thought it was interesting that the river was that disgusting.
I
And
didn't.
so I
I
don't
genuinely
know
was just
why.
like, oh, the boys hang out in
Well,
sewage.
no, I had this fascination then. Like, how gross was this river? Because you hear that all the time, like in the olden days when the sewage just went right into the rivers, like everything was gross. But this river seemed to be like really, really
The
disgusting for some
pinnacle
reason.
of the sludge
Yes,
lord.
the pinnacle of just a disgusting place to be. So,
London. No offense.
London. So
I'm getting
I thought
quicker. I'm getting quicker on my apologies. I feel like if I leave them to the end, I'm gonna
after
get bullied.
Bentonics occurred.
I'm sorry to Bentonics.
Oh my god. Sorry, Londoners who are listening to this. I'm surprised. I thought that we were gonna get at least 2 minutes in, and then you were gonna do a British accent. I thought that's
No,
what
I
was gonna
can't do
happen.
that.
At all?
No.
Oh, interesting.
I am simply a southern cowboy.
That's
Sometimes.
nice. Sometimes, yeah. It comes
Anyway,
out when you're like angry or tired.
revert back to my
You'll be
native
like,
tongue.
yeah, you'll be a totally just normal human being, and then suddenly, if someone makes you angry, you're like, now what the hell were they thinking? I'm like, hello.
I don't know. I don't. It's fine. It's fine.
Anyways,
Sorry.
I thought to myself, how gross is this river? It was disgusting, Sam. Oh my god, the things I'm about to tell you,
I
they're gonna
mean,
shock you.
how can it get worse than sewage?
How ca excellent question. How can it get worse than sewage? Because
Need
it
a
was worse.
theme song for this. I feel like this is gonna be
So
a trend in our continuing episodes. How gross is this river?
we need to do a series on gross
How
rivers
gross
now.
is this river?
Yeah. So sewage was emptied directly into River Thames. And let me explain just a little bit about the London sewage system in the
Let me
17th
explain a
century.
little bit about poop here.
Let me go on a tangent about poop for a moment. So they had brick sewers that occasionally there were like cesspits of that were leaking methane and kind of other gases,
Pittsburgh.
which led to explosions pretty consistently. Like people were dying from the sewer explosions a decent amount.
Like, were they like taking out houses and shit?
I
Like, full on?
I'm not sure. They were decent enough that like people were actively killed in them every time one went off. So
What
I
the
don't know.
fuck?
I don't know the extent to which, like, I don't think it was like that scene from Game of Thrones where the city is blasted apart, but I think that these were smaller explosions. Um, and in 1858, they had wooden water pipes, medieval wooden water pipes. That was their sewage system,
Yeah, I mean, that makes
a
sense.
bunch of wooden pipes. So they replaced it with iron, and that
Mm,
compounded with that a toilet, a flushing toilet, was brand new. So everyone was flushing constantly.
everyone be flushing.
Everyone be flushing in
Well, I
that
mean, when
city.
you've been chucking your shit out your window via bucket
Oh, I
for
couldn't imagine.
years.
What do you so this is something I have no knowledge on, but when you had the little pot, the chamber pot, and you were
Chamber
tossing your shit
pot.
out the window,
Why do you think
did
I'm
you
an
have
expert on this?
well, I figured maybe you know something that I didn't. We can add to the knowledge. Whenever you tossed it, would you just toss it anywhere, or did you have like a
No,
designated
the
spot?
the roads. I do know something about this. What the
Oh,
fuck?
I knew it. I knew it.
The
Go
roads,
on.
they were brick, right?
hmm
They had, I don't know if they were just built like that or
Yeah.
if it was because of cart travel. You know how they have to redo the roads up here every fucking year because they don't use
Yeah.
good cement or good asphalt or whatever, and
Yeah.
it like makes the divots.
hmm
It's like that. And
Ew.
they would just like lean over or like walk outside. I guess I'm not
And
a
pour it
peasant.
right into the street.
Yeah, they would just dump it and it would run downhill.
Why did I see now? I'm not a peasant in the
I mean,
olden
I'm
time.
sure I'm not an expert in old sewage systems and shit,
Yeah.
but like they I don't know when they started installing sewers,
hmm
but they used to just fucking this is the ground, brick, house,
Yeah.
road,
Yeah.
sidewalk. I don't.
Sidewalk.
They kind of just walked wherever the fuck they wanted. Me,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'd have a poop spot.
poop
That's my takeaway
spot.
from this. I would dump my pot in a spot.
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why they kept getting sick, because they were
Yeah.
just like, here's my
Oh, I'll
window,
get to
here's
that.
the street. Poop.
Yeah. Ugh, disgusting.
Truly.
Who thought that
I don't
was
know
who
if
would
they were
think this is
like,
a good idea?
let's get a bucket of water and like wash this shit down. I don't know
Yeah.
the topography of old London, but
I'm about to go over that as well, but
oh
go on.
shit.
I'm gonna cover everything.
But like, I don't know if it's like flat, if it's hilly. I know some parts of England are like hills and shit,
Yeah.
but I would expect that you wouldn't build an like your foundation city, your foundation town on a
hmm
hill.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's flat. It just went right
Yeah.
into the river, like
Yeah.
roads and docks and shit. So I'm guessing they were just like, whoo,
Yeah.
poop to the street.
Mhm.
And then
That's
there were like channels on the sides of the street usually
oh my god.
where the
Poop
shit would flow.
channels.
Yeah, where the shit would flow.
You know what? Oh,
Truly,
no.
no, I get that.
No. I
No, it's
wouldn't be
nasty.
skipping over any poop channels. Absolutely not.
Skipping over the poop channels.
Any anyways, so
Lawrenceville, anytime a pipe bursts.
the
time the Butler Street pipes burst in Warrensville. Oh, I gotta skip over the old poop channel.
Little poops. Oh my god. Anyways, oh my god. Skipping over the poop channels.
It's a metaphor for having a really bad day.
How are you today? I'm skipping
Skipping
over
over
the poop channels. It is Lawrenceville. It's flooding, and it is a hot summer day. That's how I'm
They
doing.
found more Civil War ammunition.
Oh my gosh.
Just to add on to it. Anyway.
Oh. Anyways, yeah. Where was okay? So they replaced the wooden water pipes. They replaced them with iron. That on top of the new flushing toilets, everyone's flushing. The city's population has gone from 1 million, Sam Beer, 1 million to 3 million people.
Because of the poop flushing.
No, this is unrelated. I want you to think about all of these things adding on
I
top
don't know
of each
how
other.
big the number 1
The
million is.
pipes,
I'm in debt.
sewage, the flushing, the population is rising. So there's 3 million people flushing now.
It just I don't know why. What year was this?
This was like 1857-ish.
1857-ish.
1858. Yeah.
Okay.
So all of this is happening. 3 million people flushing. London, as you can imagine, isn't prepared for something like this. They've been tossing chamber pots into the poop channels. They're not like prepared to deal with flushing toilets.
I'm sure that it wasn't like poop channel. Everyone has flushable toilets. I don't think that's how fast it went. We all need anyone who has made it this far into this bullshit of a podcast. I know there's like at least one of you because I see the numbers. There is a time discrepancy in Tori's brain. She cannot see time. So she's like 1852 chamber pots, 1853 flushy toilets.
But it was a pretty sudden change, and it was like not sudden, but it was like a lot.
Like a dramatic, like a
time. Yeah. It was London was not prepared for anything like. Well, I mean, they did what they could, but we're gonna find out why that wasn't
did not do what they could.
Optimal conditions.
We have seen the history of England, of Great Britain. They did not They did not do what they could.
Where was I? 3 million people. Okay, 3 million people are flushing now. That on top of, we're gonna add on new things here. Outfalls from factories and slaughterhouses.
Oh, so you got like the actual industrial sludge.
You've got industrial sludge
like
coming out of all corners. Yes, constantly. You've got the sludge, the blood and guts and stuff from the slaughterhouses. You've got corpses, like a lot, too many corpses in the river.
Oh, isn't this like the time period where they didn't have like HR essentially, and if you died, they just tossed your body? That's essentially what it was. Early HR, they didn't have it. They didn't have any laws that were like, you cannot chop your employees' hands off.
Yeah. I don't. Oh God, could you imagine a peasant and you die and they chuck you in the poop channel?
They just leave you on the road to be washed down with the rain.
Anyways, so imagine all of these things adding on top of each other. Flushing, 3 million people, the factories, the sludge,
How bad
the blood.
do you think it smelled?
This led to an event called the Great Stink. Sam Beer's way ahead of me. The Great Stink happened. So the Great Stink was something that occurred in 1858 from July until August.
That's like peak humidity months too.
So the summer weather, and you like think about the time period and you think about the industrialization that was happening. Everything that was like in the city was being trapped in the city, you know? There was like a heavy layer of smog, there was a heavy layer of just stuff in the air. So that stink was like just all around you constantly. So anyways, the summer weather made the river smell like death. There were little cartoons of death like riding through the river, like the river Styx
on a speedboat.
there were cartoons, there was all this stuff. Oh my god.
Jesus
I looked
Christ.
through I looked through some of the like old newspapers, old cartoons, old things like that. Really, really funny. Awful because I couldn't imagine experiencing that, but apparently it
Imagine
smells worse
paying
than anything else
like
in this world.
more to live in a house with a view of the river, and
Mhm.
then like
Oh my god.
30 years later, you can't go outside because you get punched in the face by the Great Stink.
I can't imagine.
God, what the fuck?
And I thought this was interesting because this occurred in 1858. So this was during the mudlarking time.
Yeah.
There were people going down there in the Great
Well,
Stink.
you have to also,
Ah!
just because I know how shitty the economy treats people,
Mhm.
um, you have to imagine that they were paying more during the Great Stink to these mudlarkers.
Yeah,
So of course there
yeah.
were more mudlarkers during the Big Stink.
Ugh.
Because, well, maybe not more, but they were getting paid more. So
I'm not
if you could
sure.
deal with, no, they were absolutely definitely, because you'd have to admit, like, I can't go to this fucking river anymore. It stinks. I'm gonna
Yeah, that
die
is
in there.
true.
I have 3 kids.
Gonna
I have
die in
8
there. Yeah.
kids.
Mhm.
But your neighbor's like, I ain't got no fucking kids. I hate my
Mhm.
wife. Let's
Yeah.
go. And then the local mudlark boss is like, I have like
The
3 kids.
Mudlark
I
boss.
assume, I don't know what
No,
the,
they all were individual. Like
really,
they didn't.
where did
They
they
yeah.
sell shit?
Yeah, they weren't a collective. They were individuals who would go down there and make their own rules and collect their own
So you're
things.
telling
And
me that these bodies might not even have been from Industrial Revolution stuff. This could have just been people offing other mudlarkers.
yeah, that's true. It was every man for himself down there.
What the fuck?
Actually, and I'll get to what mudlarking is today, but even today, there are people who go down to mudlark and they're like really picky and finicky and kind of territorial about what spots they mudlark in. So I can only imagine.
What it was like with no rules.
Yeah, with no rules, and this was your only livelihood.
Strangling old Johnny in the fucking the the, the Great Stink River.
Yeah, leaving him in the poop channel. You did what you could.
I guess.
Anyways, so the Great Stink, it was disgusting. But it's important to note that people were very, very scared of this. And that's because during this time period, they believed in miasma, which was, they believed
I
that
was like, is that a
sickness.
prescription medication?
No, miasma. It's an inhaler.
That kills you. It's full of great stink juice.
Anyways, miasma was the belief that like sickness and things like that traveled through the air and then you could breathe them in and you could get sick, which was to some extent like absolutely true, you know. But there were some illnesses that they thought could be transmitted in this way that weren't. One illness that had three really major outbreaks was cholera. And cholera is when you get sick from drinking dirty water. And at the time, all of these doctors, and I only know this portion of it because it was an episode of a show that I watched, but I did do research. Um, but
Me and all of my useless information. I watched a documentary on it once 8 years ago.
but during these cholera outbreaks, all of the doctors at the time kind of thought that it was miasma, but there was one doctor, John Snow, who thought differently. John Snow did know
Bastard of
something
the
that day.
North.
He knew what.
The bastard of the North swinging around.
Yes, yes. He knew that. Well, he took out this big map of the city of all of London,
As you do
and
as a
what he
doctor.
did, was he started to visit each and every person who had died from cholera, and he made a little tick mark in front of the house. And what he noticed is that it was only in certain areas. And he was like, "Oh, this is kind of weird." And he was like, "It could still be like, you know, you're breathing in the particles in the air." But he noticed that none of the doctors who were treating cholera patients were getting sick. And he was like, "That's kind of weird because you would." And there was one patient that he saw who drank water out of a well in this
Mm,
one part of the city, but
yeah.
she was from another part of the city and she was the only outlier. And he was like, "Oh my God, it's this well. She's the only person who hasn't lived near this well." So he went to the well and he replaced like the handles and stuff, and the outbreak eventually went away. But they found out later on that it was caused from the sewage leaking into
Through
the
the,
water.
yeah, tainted
Yeah,
groundwater.
yeah. So after that, people were like, we've got to get this river cleaned up. We've got to do what we can for these
Fast
people.
forward a couple hundred years, and it is still
And
not there.
so they did all of these initiatives where they put out like, Londoners, clean your river.
Clean
Don't
your
throw
shit.
trash in the river. It was literally, they just said, please don't throw your literal shit or trash or anything at all in the river. They were like, please, we know that this is your way of life, but you cannot be
I
allowed
know
to
you're
operate like
fucking
this any
nasty, but
longer.
please stop.
Yeah, they were basically begging Londoners, like, don't throw anything in the river. We're trying to clean it. That, in addition to, they like reworked all of their sewer systems because at that point they realized, like, okay, we're actively killing our own people because we won't fix any of this.
The explosions didn't.
The explosion is not what did it. It was the cholera. The
Okay,
third outbreak of cholera.
okay.
Um, so yeah, there was this little cartoon that I saw where Death was riding through the river once again, but he was fishing out the bodies of the people who wouldn't help pay to clean the river. So it was very
That's
they were
that's
very forceful about
that's a
please
useful form
help.
of propaganda.
Yeah, they were like, please help us clean, please pay to help it get cleaned. There were all these initiatives that they did. Fast forward. Oh wait, no. Yes, fast forward.
Go back
Sorry.
and then go forward
Blast.
again.
Fast forward to 1957, the river, so all the way 1957, the river is declared biologically dead by the
Cool.
National History Museum. Um,
That's a feat. Good for them.
the Natural History Museum. Yeah. It was like they did what they could, but they just did not think that anything was gonna happen there for London. They didn't think the river was gonna come
It's
back to
not
life.
popping off, London. I'm sorry.
Today,
Today,
London is one of the cleanest. London. The
London
River
itself
Thames
is the cleanest river.
is one of the cleanest rivers in the world that flows through
Really?
any major city. Yes, I thought that was the wildest thing I've
I
ever
think
read in
that's
my
a
life.
fucking lie. I've
We
never
should
been to
take,
London. I think
we
that's a
should,
fucking lie.
well, we should take into account that it also has some of the highest records of microplastics of any river in the world.
Well,
So
then
it's
it's not
clean, but
clean.
it's not. It's like there's a lot of pollution and stuff in it, but it is clean. Like there's no more sewage in it. And that's what's important.
No. Microplastics kill everything in the ocean.
Oh my goodness. I know. Yeah, they have a long way to go, but it is really clean now, which is wild to me. London today is working on what's called a super sewer. And they think that River Thames is going to be like ridiculously clean after this is all
They get rid of the plastic?
installed. I really don't think so, but
Then it's not clean. What is
I
wrong
know.
with
We're
people?
talking about the sewage.
I'm hitting fucking. I'm
I
going way
know.
too high on the fucking the sounds here. My bad. Getting heated about the
Um,
microplastics again.
they started the super sewer in 2016, and they're actually still working on it because COVID delayed construction on the super sewer. So they're
Really?
still at
In
it.
the UK, where they didn't believe in it for like a whole year, you know, and
Yes,
they
they
let.
won't close a bar,
Wow,
but they will
wow.
stop the sewer construction.
Oh, gotta can't save the fucking whales, but you know what we can do? Kill a bunch of people.
Hmm.
Idiots.
Oh,
That's why they
so
live on an island.
that is all of my
Offense
so
meant
much
there.
more apologizing to do to Londoners after this.
No, I'm not apologizing for that. Y'all are dumb as shit. Wear a fucking mask. I get that we live in the United States. We're not much better, but we wear masks.
Kind of. We do.
We do. No, that's what I meant. Me and you do.
Okay, all right.
We have the platform here.
Yeah.
Step
So
we can skip over the poop sewer and
that
yell at them.
You know what? If some of these people who don't wear masks and are like, I'm just gonna breathe like directly onto people, these are the
Mm.
people who made the poop channels. That's what these people are essentially doing.
They're
The poop
stepping
channel.
into the poop channel.
They're stepping right into the poop channel.
Truly.
Ugh.
This episode supposed to be about something else, and we're almost done with it, and we haven't talked about it at all.
We're getting to it now. That was all my information on the London sewage systems.
We
Okay,
should just
so
make the episode about that. That was interesting.
I thought that was so interesting too. And it was such a tangent. And I was like, oh, maybe people won't want to hear about this. But I think it's so neat. Anyways, the river. You asked me how deep
The
the river was the
river.
other day. So I looked it up. The river's 66 feet deep. It's a deep
That's
river.
deep as shit.
It's not safe to swim in, also. Like, it's not
That makes
fantastic.
sense, yeah.
Not because of the poop anymore, but because it's going to sweep you away and
Sweet.
take you downstream. It's
Yeah.
not gonna. Yeah. Anyways, there have been whales in the River Thames for some reason.
This.
Humpback,
Yes.
beluga, a sperm whale once swam up into the river, but it swam way too far into this like shallow channel, and then it died. Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting things in this river. However, we're getting to the
Whales.
most interesting things,
Bodies.
the treasures. Oh, it's important to note that the river is 66 feet deep now.
How
A lot
wide
of this
is it
I'm not
regulated?
I didn't look up how
Is
wide
it a
it was.
regulated width?
I believe I don't know if it is, but I know that it is only as deep as it is now because of man-made construction and the things that we've done to it.
Well, yeah, they have to, like they do here
Mhm.
in Pittsburgh, they have to dredge it so boats
Yeah.
don't get fucked in it. I don't. Stuck. Get fucked. Jesus Christ.
It's important to note. Skipping over that entirely. It's important to note that in the Roman era, which I'll talk about, it was really shallow.
Yeah, like a creek.
Yeah,
A
well,
wide
not like
creek.
a creek, but like yeah, a wider creek, sure. So there are lots of things in this river, but we're gonna get to the most exciting thing: the treasures. What is
Pirate Tori? Hello.
what is mudlarking today? Today, people will go down to the shore of River Thames as homeless children did once, and they will fish their grubby little hands into the mud and they will pull out incredible treasures. So, today you need a Thames foreshore permit. You are not allowed to go down.
Is it called a Thames foreshore?
Yes, foreshore. Shore, like
oh,
yeah.
Stupid fucking accent. Hate living here. Anyway.
Yeah, you need a permit. You are not allowed to go down there. You are allowed, actually, let me scratch that. You are allowed to go down, but you can only look. You aren't allowed to touch a thing.
No
touching at all. So you have to get a permit. And I looked up how much the permit was because I was genuinely interested.
They have to be so expensive.
So for a year, for an adult to go down into the mud and poke around, it is 90 euros. And then they have two junior ages. They have one that's 15 to 17, it's 60 euros, and they have one that's 12 to 14, that's 35 euros. So I guess you can't get a permit, or I wasn't clear if you're not allowed to go down there if you're under 12 years old because it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Or if they just didn't have a permit. Yeah. So monthly
Could you imagine an 8-year-old trying to wade into a giant river and getting swept away?
No, I couldn't.
I could.
Well, you know why it's dangerous? I'll skip to this part of my notes. The tides rise and go down about 23 feet.
Jesus.
And it's really sudden. And there have been stories of people who go mudlarking and they're like, woohoo, fun. And then they get stuck in the mud. They get stuck in the mud and the river rises and they're like, oh my God. They're like, I didn't prepare for this at all. And you have to go down there. It's recommended that you go down there with some sort of guide who knows the tides and who knows when it's going to happen. And they all, I mean, it's not like they leave each other down there to die. Everybody warns each other and lets people know.
See you later, kid.
It's not like every man for himself. Everybody down there is looking after each other, but it's really dangerous.
What the fuck? I wasn't expecting that.
23 feet. I wasn't expecting that either. I thought that was absolutely nuts.
What the fuck?
Because they kept talking about the tide rising and how dangerous it was, and I was like, well, I mean,
I mean, you
what's a
always,
few feet?
anytime you're near water, you have to worry about the tide. But it's,
Yeah, but that was
is it?
massive.
How is it that much?
I don't know. But it's very easy to get stuck in the mud and then just drown or be swept away. Um, but
What the
so
fuck?
you have to obtain a permit. And then the other thing that you have to do is you must report items of archaeological interest to the Portable Antiquities Finds Liaison Officer at the Museum of London. Um, and according to the Treasure Act of 1996, it is your legal obligation to report all finds of treasure. Um, I didn't write down the list of what makes things a treasure because I wasn't sure. It was like a lot. It was a ton. Um, I know that one of the things one of the things that makes something not a treasure is if you can track down the owner. But I mean, you're
But
not going to be able to track down anything in there. So this brings me to the treasure. You have to wear gloves and boots and go out and watch for the tide, and you can go looking for treasure. And there is a ton of it. There is so much treasure.
this is where our special interests intersect.
There is so much treasure. Oh my god. And you know, I love it when people go out with like little what are they? Beep beep. They look for metal detectors.
Little beep beeps. They got it. Beep beeps
They
got
go
it.
out. Yeah, I love it when people go out on the beach and they look for things and treasures. I think that's the
Fuck
coolest
yeah.
thing ever.
Fuck
So the
yeah.
fact that this exists, this little muddy spot where it's like all the treasure in the world that you could possibly want is collected there. I think that's so cool. Everything is preserved due to the low amount of oxygen in the river, so nothing is rotting. Here are some of the things that people have found. There's prehistoric flint tools, Roman bone hairpins, clay pipes, coins of all kinds, Mesolithic hand axes, megalodon teeth, tons of human remains, so many human remains,
Comes with the territory.
perfectly preserved. Yeah, it's gross. Pottery, artwork, shoes, clothing, sculptures, roofing tiles with little paw prints from cats and dogs and things embedded in the clay, which I think is so cool. Um, but there is so much there, spanning across all different time periods and all different cultures and all different people. And you have to wonder, like, why is all this
I
stuff
don't
there?
wanna. I don't wanna crush your vibe here because I know last night, 2 days ago,
Hmm.
time means nothing to me. We talked about how some of it probably got there, but a new
Yeah.
idea just popped in my brain.
Hmm.
Pirates,
Oh yeah, there were a ton of yeah, there were
because
a ton of pirates.
the Great Britain was one of the biggest places for pirates who don't call themselves pirates because they work for the
Hmm.
queen or
Yeah,
whatever the fuck their
yeah.
guiding thought was. They
That's
were
as
all
much
up
as
in there, right?
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Actually, I when I was doing all the research for this, I found an article where someone found the human remains of a man that was thrown overboard off a pirate ship, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "Well, that's cool. I wouldn't mind seeing that, I guess, but
Just him. No one else.
just him. I don't want to. You know what? If I were digging in there and I found a human remain, I don't know. That wouldn't excite
Well, I
me.
mean,
That
if
would.
it's fresh, I'd be like, oh god.
Oh
But
no,
if
no.
it's
I mean,
just
like, if you find a
bonies,
skeleton, yeah.
yeah.
That's They're like perfectly
Ew.
preserved skeletons in there.
Ew.
um, but yeah, no, that crossed my mind, and the fact that people were just constantly stealing and from other countries and constantly
Hmm.
like this was obviously like a lot of this was trade and a lot of this was great, but I'm also assuming that a great deal of it was not great, and a great deal of this does not absolutely belong to London,
Oh,
in any way, shape, or form.
most things in
No,
London don't.
no, no.
Did we ever
Um,
figure out, because I know we talked about the Roman tiles,
mhm.
did we ever figure out if Rome occupied, right? Julius Caesar
Yeah,
occupied, right?
yeah,
For a
that's
hot
my
minute.
next point. So, Rome did control London, and they called it Londinium
Ugh.
for a great time. So, Julius Caesar
Julius
did
Caesar.
gain control of Rome.
He didn't name it
Um,
all after Alexandria for the like everyone else did for.
um, Londinium was a major port. And it was like a full-fledged Roman city. I mean, not like a thriving, enormous Roman city. It
But
was a
it
little
had like
port,
the
but
infrastructure, right?
yeah, it
Yeah.
did. So, yeah, you can find a ton of Roman artifacts while you're mudlarking, purely because it used to be a Roman city. So merchants and traders from all over the world exchanged their goods there, and I think that's really neat. And I like to think about because I thought it was interesting that Roman era Londinium was
Rome.
really Roma was really shallow. And so when you think about all of
Yeah,
the things that were
how did,
lost to
yeah.
time in the depths of River Thames,
Especially because they're dredging it and whatever
yeah,
else they need to do so boats don't get flipped.
yeah. I was like, oh, there must be all sorts of cool stuff in there.
I
There
wonder
is
how
obviously.
it's. I wonder how it's stayed in there.
What do you mean? Oh, like in the mud and stuff.
Yeah,
I
because
don't know.
with all the work and bridge construction and what I'm
Yeah,
guessing is wall construction for the river so it doesn't flood.
yeah. It's like it's all pretend. There's a couple
They
archaeologists
just
going out
they
there and
sneak out
throwing
there
stuff
once a
into the
month.
mud.
Come, children, feed,
hmm
feed on the Roman artifacts. Like those shitty places in the desert that are like, sift through some sand, find some gems.
You think about I thought this was interesting too, is that after Londinium was like a major port, it was never quite like a huge thriving city. And then eventually over time it kind of died out and then nobody really lived there. And then eventually Julius Caesar was like, we can't guarantee your safety,
Julius
even
Caesar
though
was like, "Who are you?"
we were like, so we control
Stab,
this
stab, stab,
area,
stab,
but
stab.
we don't really remember you and we're not really going to protect
Yeah.
you. And so people
So they
fled,
probably just
obviously.
went home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it was interesting that this was like a hot spot off and on throughout time and history. So there's so much cool stuff there.
And it really does make sense that this was a hot spot port because it had the
It does.
protection of the river,
It did.
the island, super
Mhm,
easy to get back into the ocean.
mhm.
I'm guessing
Yeah.
whaling happened near there because that used to be, I don't know if it still is, but that used to be like a really, really big hotspot for like whale migrations.
Really? Oh, that's so cool.
So it's probably whaling stuff.
hmm
Doggerland
hmm
from the previous episode.
Tune into the previous
Tune in
episode.
the previous episode. Um, Vikings.
Mhm.
Anyone really traveling through Europe would probably
Yeah.
stop over there.
Well, it's I have this a little list of like all the different time periods and cultures and things that they found artifacts from, and there's been Tudor artifacts and medieval and ancient Roman, Grecian, and African artifacts. And I like it's all over the world, and I thought that was so
Yeah.
cool because you can go in there and reach your hand in the mud and pull out anything. I just think that's so cool. I don't know. I thought it sounded like a really lovely way to spend the weekend. And it gets people excited about history.
No, it gets people excited about money.
I guess. Well, you can't really keep
Oh,
anything.
they don't pay
Well,
you
I
for
mean,
them?
you could. I don't know. I would imagine not.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I just imagine you kind of like donated it, like
Oh,
were forced to donate it. You know what I mean?
yeah, by law.
Um, because I mean, and I'm sure there are people who go down there and find things and keep it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
nobody's turning in everything that they find.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool. And if there's like if you don't live in London and you have no access to the River Thames, what you can do is log on to
Donate
the
to
old
us at www.
donate to us and we will fish through the River Thames for you. No, don't do that. There are tons of videos. There's tons of news articles, and there are like coffee table books that you can get, and all of these different finds are in there, and they talk about the history. There are a lot of different mudlarkers who kind of do this thing as like
A hobby.
yeah. And they like post what they find. There are groups on Facebook that you can join if you want to like see what people are looking through. And those are really interesting specifically because a lot of historians will follow those groups as well. So if they're like, "Hey, I found a Roman coin. Does anybody know what emperor this is?" They all chime in and they're like, oh, it's this and this and this,
It's
but
McStabbo.
it's mixed stab. That's, you know what? Most of the comments were like that. I hate to say it. I want to be like, this is such a place of history and
Knowledge and learning.
knowledge.
That's all
Most
fucking
of the
Stabbo.
comments were like, Stabbo. Yeah.
Hey, happy eyes.
Yeah, but I thought this was the coolest thing in the world, and I thought it sounded like a ton of fun. So if you have like 40 extra euros on you and a free weekend for the month, you can go down
For the
and
month.
you can look around, make sure you wear gloves and boots and protective gear
Please
and
wait
watch
until
the
the
tides.
pandemic is over. Please wait until the pandemic is over.
Yes,
Please wait
and
until the
don't,
pandemic is over.
yeah, wear your masks and don't
Wash your fucking hands.
add add to poop channels.
What's wrong with us?
I don't know,
Was
but I
that
don't
the
want to end it
ending?
there. No, I don't want to end it there. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. We were both really interested in this topic, and it was a pleasure to learn more about it. Um, if you'd like to learn more, there's tons of information on it out there in the world. I encourage everyone to go and do some research on some of the finds that people have done while mudlarking because it's really cool. But thank you, and tune in again to hear us talk about more mystery knowledge.